What is the worst thing that you've seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously, I never saw him again. Got caught with CP on his work computer. Had access to the net taken away but wasn't fired as it's possible he didn't know it was real CP. Stole a bunch of marked tools, they were painted white, showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with said tools in the background. Gets reported. Boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me. I stole a gallon of white paint." Never heard the boss laughing so hard. Year later or so he gets promoted, lol. Had a boss storing pictures of himself in only his wide-open bathrobe on company servers. It was reported to HR but wasn't fired for it. Later he was arrested as part of an undercover sting where he thought he was meeting a 15-year-old girl about 500 miles away. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency, or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it. And said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door. But the owner is so ancient and out of touch I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. Had a coworker as a standard business practice falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure homeowners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I couldn't do anything as I had no direct proof. But he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the out of him. I ended up working for that second company and haven't looked back. After already being disciplined and essentially demoted for doing his job terribly. My coworker drunk texted all of our managers in the middle of the night asking why they didn't love him. It's been about 2 weeks and I haven't seen him since. But he's not gone. Not the worst thing he could have done, but I cringe thinking about it. I work in a garden center. This just happened today. Buddy has worked one today of his scheduled shifts in the past 2 weeks. He calls in all the time, leaves a message with the cashiers, and hangs up before a manager can talk to him. On the off chance he does show up, he doesn't do anything besides move some plants around. My mom was walking through the garden center today and saw him squatted behind a stack of plants playing on his phone. Further, the guy takes multiple unauthorized breaks a day and sits in his car for at least an hour because his back hurts. He has had 2 write-ups for missing work and somehow this lazy shite is still on payroll. He's in towards both coworkers and customers alike. Nothing he's done is as preposterous as some of the stories I'm sure are on this thread. But the sheer consistency of his laziness is baffling to me. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and have the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I am that guy. AMA. A guy at the plant I work at scrapped $360,000 in airplane parts because he didn't even bother to look at the work instructions. He just drives a forklift now. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information, because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as HR, and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop or they'd take it up with management, and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it, and my wife went to management with everything and said, "This guy's out or I'm quitting." Well, she quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. Nothing. Documenting work as completed when no actual work had been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or reprimand. Eventually, management changed. Figured out no work was being done. Called it fraud. And canned them. The job was easy too. And good money. I don't get why they didn't just do the work. Full-on sexual harassment. Little backstory. I work in a private country club-style dining, banquet event space. A drunk-on-the-job manager pinned an hourly server against the wall during a nighttime wedding reception. She punched him in the ribs and tried pushing him off of her. We all saw it. We all reported to our. Another manager physically removed him off of her. This was about 4 months ago and he's still in his position. She quit due to him telling everyone she'd lied about the entire situation. Telemarketing coworker was very obviously a psycho or sociopath. Showed up late every shift by definition. Had quite a temper with authority. But would often just cause trouble out of boredom. By his own admission, the most controversial thing he did one particular day was address every client he spoke to by the N-word. Once the manager heard him. He yelled at him outside for 20 minutes and that was the end of it. A week later, this coworker denied it had ever happened before, going on a tangent about how he liked to start arguments with his girlfriend just to see her cry. Sociopath. I can do an opposite example. My company tried to fire a guy for on a customer site. Essentially he did some shady and actually fireable offenses, but HR decided to let him off with a warning. I think they quickly realized their mistake, but they had already signed off on the first issues. So instead they tried to get him on anything they could, and that ended up being while working at a customer site. Oh man. It was winter time and she was helping a customer by carrying something they had purchased out for them. Once outside, but still on the store property, she slipped and sustained an injury. Was threatening to sue the business and was also trying to claim workers' compensation. Came into work every day with a sling on her arm and constantly wincing and being in pain. Anyways, HR and the store manager call her into a meeting. Sit her down and show her the video surveillance from outside, which she obviously didn't know was there, showing her faking her fall. I don't know everything, but she got called out hard and she broke down and admitted everything. For some reason they kept her on. She then tried it again like 6 months later, this time claiming that a customer had something from their cart hit her or fall on her or something. Again. Tried to claim workers' comp and had this whole show of being injured. They pull up security footage again and disprove her injury claims. She still wasn't fired. Blew my mind lol. He tried to run over a security officer with his car when the security officer told him he couldn't park where he wanted to park. Almost succeeded. 2. I worked at a convenience store in a mall. We had lotto. And I had this worker who people called Crazy Joe. Sometimes, when people are doing lotto, they take a long time picking out tickets. So Joe was waiting on a guy. And he was taking a while. And a line was forming. Pretty long. Joe looked at the line and yelled out, "Does anyone have a gun so I can kill myself?" He then stormed off. Same place. Gene. A guy in his 50s. Touched 2 of my co-workers' asses. One was 17 at the time. The other 19. Both girls. Neither one was fired. One of my former coworkers, she's since been fired for stealing customers' lottery winnings, told an elderly woman that she was stupid for not knowing how to pump gas. This woman's husband had recently passed and he had always pumped the gas for her. So she never learned. I had horrible second-hand embarrassment when the woman came in and told us. We relayed it to the manager. Eat weed. Urinate outdoors on garbage cans in public. And drink on the job. I work in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days assuming all was well. All was not well. At all. The dehumidifier out while the plants were being hung to dry and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point every single plant was coated in mold and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note. I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now and am mad all over again. His only punishment was to be denied moving to day shift, but other than that it was forgotten about.